Excused. Okay.
All right. We are not going to have a joint public hearing tonight. That has been postponed till the next meeting on November 19th at the Town of Lisbon Town Hall on Thursday, October 10th, 2019 at 6:31 p.m. Roll call, Jane.
Okay. Joe Osterman.
Here.
Becky Potecker is excused. Ed Nelson.
Present.
Okay. Mark Myers excused. Jane Stadler present. Brian Oliphant.
Here.
Chad Szymanski.
Here.
Dan Lindstrom.
Here.
Dan Green.
Here.
And Michael Van Clunen.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jane. Item 2 is comments from citizens present pertaining to any item on the agenda tonight. Does anyone wish to speak? All right, item 3 is discussion and necessary action on the September 12th, 2019 Plan Commission public hearing and meeting minutes. We have the minutes. Does anyone have any questions or comments, or is it ready for a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from September 12th Planning Commission meeting. I'm sorry,
No, that's correct.
correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
Thursday, September
Yes.
12th.
Is motion's been made? Is there a second?
I will second that.
A second to include the public hearing and all the minutes?
Yes, correct.
All right. Any other discussion on them? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Item 4 is new business. Item A is also being postponed until November 14th. So that'll start us off on item B, which is discussion and necessary action on the request from Parking Lot Maintenance, Inc. for the property located at West 225 North 3178 to Plainville Road, tax key LSBT 0287.984, for a site plan and plan of operation amendment to construct a temporary storage structure.
Oh, here?
You even get to sit down.
Oh, man. Thank you for having me tonight. Appreciate it.
All right. Dan, you want to start us?
Yep. All right. So this item's before you as a result of the applicant coming into the town and coming to a town planner appointment, and us not kind of having a clear direction of which way to kind of send them down because of the unique nature of where we are, the unique nature of the lot. So a little bit of an overview. The Plan Commission saw this original site plan, I think 4 years ago. I think 2015 for you guys. And what it was a operation building for Parking Lot Maintenance Incorporated. That site plan did also include a location for a proposed additional building. That ultimately never came forward with any renderings or anything else, and so we're left with a site plan that was identifying a location, but not any additional materials or any additional things that would go along with it. So the applicant came to the town planner appointment and requested a type of storage facility that would allow for their salt storage, and so that they can continue to maintain and operate as a maintenance, as I guess you would say, surface maintenance company and operation company at that point. So looking at our zoning code is a little bit different from a standpoint of how we can go about kind of going in this direction. The salt storage itself would typically be considered by the definition of the zoning code as a contractor's yard. In the pure definition sense, that would be required in that category. However, a contractor's yard does require 5 acres. We're sitting on about 2.5 acres here, and so typically it would not be able to be considered a contractor's yard. So then you're left with looking at the rest of the site and the rest of the business park and the rest of the industrial park. And there is outdoor storage going on in that area, but it's typically more along the lines of equipment being used as well as goods and services that are about to either be manufactured or waiting to be shipped or those other elements. And those are allowed to be typically stored in outdoor capacity as long as it does receive Plan Commission approval. So we have almost a little bit of one and a little bit of the other one to help kind of direct the applicant. So the applicant came to us and kind of proposed a structure similar to this nature to be a kind of a salt storage facility. In this nature, this would be close to considered a temporary structure, but at the same time, most likely wouldn't be taken down on a 180-day basis, which is what our temporary structures require. So it's not quite a temporary structure at that point either. So we're kind of going down a couple different paths here, and that's the reason why it's kind of in front of you tonight as almost a conceptual, because it was Dan and I were sitting here kind of scratching our brains trying to figure out how we can help this applicant potentially meet their needs, but at the same time meet the town's codes requirements. And so from that standpoint, we took a look at, would something like this typically meet what would be required in that district? I would probably say no, because it still is considered, I guess you would say, outdoor storage. It's unprotected from a rain coming in standpoint. So it can't be in that contractor's yard definition either, because it's under that 5 acres. And so trying to figure out what direction to go. I did provide a couple examples of how we potentially could get them to be a salt storage facility inside of the packet as well, a couple example pictures. But really the applicant needs to kind of discuss kind of their operation with you and kind of get your feelings of where potentially this could go. And I can be kind of a sounding board to any kind of thoughts and process after that. Once we get some direction here tonight, the applicant can then go back and kind of prepare some example drawings, elevations, and amend the plan if necessary to come back with a full set. We asked them to come here tonight as a result of, we wanted to get them in front of you as quickly as possible so they didn't kind of lose extra time of if it just would have got here and then would have been sent back. And so we wanted them to come here today to kind of talk to you guys about that. So I can answer any questions that you may have on the zoning code situation, but again, the applicant is here to kind of talk about their process as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Make sure that next one.
Hello? Hello? I can talk about it.
Yeah, you have good.
So, I mean, you guys want me to go here?
Yeah.
No,
Sure.
Yes.
All right, so essentially, from an existing facility use, we're a construction company. We store all manners of things on and inside our property. We have heavy equipment, light equipment, trucks. We have scrap material. We have wood. We have pretty much anything a construction company could have, right? And it's all outdoor storage. It's all, and that's consistent with the use we've had for 4 years. If you were to look at some of our neighbors, like Ferguson's got miles and miles of pipe stacked up, right? You look at Globe has pipe, important thing for the security of and safety of pavements, and also part of our business model. We do snow removal, we provide de-icing. Salt can be stored in a number of different ways. The least desirable way is to make a pile and dump it on the pavement and cover it with a tarp. Right? Obvious pain point, right? Because in order to get the salt out, you have to lift the tarp up, you have to scoop the salt out, then you have to put the tarp back on it. Right? We're trying to do one better. We're trying to make an enclosure, something that will keep it out of the elements, something that will protect it and also make it look nicer. I mean, for those of you that are familiar with our property, we take good care of it. We keep it clean. It's well organized. I'd invite any one of you to go over and look at it any given time, and I think you'd agree with us. Dan's correct. We do have an approved provision for a formal building. We'd rather not build a formal building. 1, because it's expensive. 2, because we really don't need it. And I don't think there's a third reason. I was going to come up with a third, but there really isn't one. So essentially, we could talk about the whole notion of a contractor's yard. We're not selling anything. It's not for resale. It's only for us. So really it's storage. And if storage is allowed on the ground, as is, I would ask the commission to allow us to store it in a prettier way, in a more organized way, in a way that is safer, cleaner, and more professional.
Is it going to be on a hard surface?
It is on hard surface. The entire yard is paved.
Okay.
The from Dan's pictures that he had up, the one structure that I'm looking at was the one that was to the far right, would seem to be the most I mean, obviously from a feasibility standpoint of loading in and loading out, we're talking about bulk salt, sir. We're not talking about bags.
No, this is bulk. We're talking about approximately 100 truckloads of salt to be stored and then consumed throughout the winter.
Okay. There was the feasible question about would this structure be permanent? In other words, would it be up for 365 days, year after year?
It could be.
Okay.
I'm not gonna say it wouldn't be. I mean, it's one of those things that you build it, you don't really wanna take it down. But that being said, the very nature of it is that it could be, you know, depending on use or whatever,
Is your plan to keep it up year-round, though?
Yeah.
Is that your plan?
reasonably.
Okay.
I mean, things can change. You know, I would say for the foreseeable 365 days, yes.
The material we're using, is that a heavy plastic? Is it canvas?
Yeah, it's a precast concrete block structure with a industrial grade canvas that has cable coil steel running through around it, you know, bent column, you know, bent trusses. It's a legit structure. It's structurally approved. It's not a lean-to. It's not a tent.
Okay, and how is it anchored into your
It's
cement
anchored through a
base?
combination. I submitted some schematic drawings, which I don't know if they made the Plan Commission, but essentially it's a combination of tension wire, cable, and secured spikes, anchors.
Okay, because obviously, you know, we have high winds, canvas rips, so it's obviously to your fundamentally economic advantage that your product not get wet.
There's no doubt, but this is also a structurally engineered item. This isn't something you buy at Home Depot. You know, so it'll pass wind load, I promise you.
Okay.
It's not gonna blow into the pond.
And I know there, in the way that was laid out by Mr. Langstrom, thank you, we had choices of, obviously the difference would be that the buildings would have a closed front on them and would have doors. But feasibility from the standpoint of moving, if it's in terms of a front end loader loading into a truck, I'm assuming, the bulk salt.
Yeah, typically the discharge method to fill the unit would be to dump a dump truck as far back in as possible and push the pile up with a loader. To retrieve the material, to your point, you would take a bucket full of salt out of the loader, drive it out of the structure and load the truck. So, I mean, there are examples which are readily available that have combination of partial and full front options, you know, in the form of basically instead of a 3-sided enclosure, it's a 4. I mean, the water that can or would get into it is pretty insignificant. It's more largely aesthetic from our perspective.
Well, from my standpoint, as far as any water getting into the product, I would be more concerned about the salt leaching off the site and permeating into any, you know, soils that are nearby possibility. I know there's no private homes within, because this is Quarry Corners where you're located. Am I-
Correct.
Okay. There's no private homes
No.
close.
No.
So we're not dealing, because obviously the main thing I think about salt is contamination, groundwater.
Sure.
But that,
Yeah.
I don't think that's an issue.
I'd probably venture you'd get more salt in the pond from the road.
Than you would get
from
off
our
your site.
enclosure.
Sure.
Not to cut you short, Ed.
No,
just
I
so
was
that
just
we-
going to say no further questions.
The issue we're looking at here is our zoning says
Yeah.
this can't go there.
Right.
Yes.
That's what I'm
We
trying to look
can
into here.
put a wig on it, but it is what it is
It
the
is what
problem here.
What is the
and
height
it says,
gonna be, do you know?
We would propose 22 feet.
Dan, what do we have for height restrictions as far as this?
be well under that.
Okay.
So if I could offer a comment to you, would you, as the commission, stipulate that we could dump a pile of salt on our property?
Will it be 100 truckloads that's gonna fit in here?
what does our
Doesn't
zoning
matter.
say?
I mean, I don't think the
Can we dump
ordinance
salt?
restricts how much we could dump on our property if it fits. And I'm not trying to be stubborn, I'm trying to play devil's advocate.
But
that
it-
we're-
What you're asking something that we can't do though. The zoning says this is a salt, you're telling us this is a salt shed essentially. The storage of salt is specifically mentioned in contractor's yard, therefore it should be classified as such instead of an outdoor storage as much as surrounding parcels in the business park are classified. See, that's where we're running into a problem. I don't know that we have the power to do this.
Yeah, I was gonna say, should this go to the
Well-
Board of Appeals maybe?
Well, my other comment is I'm not sure how the other uses in the area got approved or if they should be potentially more readily enforced. As we talked about, you know, there's rock and being stored elsewhere, there's other things being stored elsewhere.
But always is over 6 acres. Globe is over 6 acres. I
Grove
just,
is
I,
actually made up of 4 parcels, does
Right.
that matter?
it's 4.7 something on one of them. And I think that approval was done in the 80s.
Prior to the existing code as it.
Right.
that
It was under a different
exists
code.
today.
But my understanding, and I respect your point, you know, the simplest path through here is to grant us the equivalent of a variance to have a contractor.
We can't do that. You're at the wrong board for that.
So then.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to explain here, is there's certain things we can and cannot do, and I believe this is one of them that we cannot do. It doesn't mean you can't go to the zoning board of appeals and request that, but one of the stipulations of the zoning board of appeals is you cannot use financial as a reason. So telling them that it costs money to build a building,
Well, that doesn't bother me at all.
well then let's do this one.
Sure, but
I mean-
I'm interested in business, you're interested in the example that is the best value or return on investment.
I understand it, but I'm trying to explain to you at the zoning board of appeals, you can't use that as an excuse.
Sure, so.
You have to
my-
prove a hardship.
so my reason would not be to cite an excuse or a hardship, but it would be to say, how about I go dump 25 truckloads of salt on the pavement and store it there?
Again, it isn't a matter of whether or not we think it makes sense or doesn't make sense. There's certain things we can legally and cannot legally do. And that's what we're trying to establish here. We can talk about this all night long and say we think it would look good and everything else. But what we need to establish right now is, can we legally do this? Otherwise, we're going to talk here for an hour for nothing.
Sure, but I do want to, I respect your point, but I want to fall back to, you cited another example, Dan. One was a contractor's yard. The other was
Outdoor storage of materials.
outdoor storage, and I'm talking about outdoor storage of materials.
The storage of salt is specifically mentioned in contractor's yard.
Yeah,
It is
but-
specifically mentioned in contractor's yards.
But I'm not looking to resell it like Ferguson.
And-
Ferguson stores pipe and sells it. Visit Sewer stores product and sells it. I don't sell anything. I'm not looking to operate a contractor's yard. I'm looking to store materials.
A contractor's yards doesn't even allow for where landscaping or materials or other stores are sold for retail or wholesale purposes, accessory would not be considered a contractor's yard. A contractor's yard is exactly that. It's storing of the material for your use so that you can continue to do what you're doing as a result of it. The outdoor storage, the outdoor and outdoor storage is in keeping with an unroofed, unenclosed area of any goods, salvageable materials, merchandise, vehicles, or other similar uses. Outside storage in a business park industrial zoning must be screened or landscaped to the satisfaction of the town plan commission. So if it wasn't for the specifically stated use of salt in a contractor's yard, potentially would be in a different situation. But because our zoning code is specifically stating where a salt storage should be, is the reason why we're kind of where we are today. And as a result of also, it was mentioned, are you at the right committee? The Board of Appeals should be addressing dimensional standard items. This is still a use item, which is, I don't believe the Board of Appeals would actually hear that case or that item as a result of a potential change to this one. So a little caution on that one, because again, it's not a dimensional item, it's actually a use item, which is the purpose of the Plan Commission at that point. So from that standpoint is the reason why there's so many questions about which direction to kind of send this one. By putting a more permanent structure with some large sliding doors would meet the definition of the ordinance. And again, I'm not sure how some of the other storage materials have happened over the time, but we're not reviewing those ones here tonight. We're reviewing what's in front of us.
And we have done no less in the town. That's what we have. We have a building with sliding doors. I mean, when the zoning code says something and it's specifically spelled out, we can't just come in and just say, yeah, we like it, we can do it.
But per Dan's point then, it sounds like you do have potentially have the decision-making authority to grant us the use of a contractor's yard, even though we're under 5 acres.
In that case, I wasn't trying to say that, so I'm hoping that didn't come across
I don't
that way.
think so.
Because there's 5 or 6 standards in the zoning code that specifically state what a contractor's yard is. Those are in the code, and the Plan Commission, from my review, does not have the authority to modify those preset conditions, which is what those conditions are for. They're meant to be preset so that everyone has the same kind of standards to apply for. So any landscaping company that would come in, or any other type of or company that was storing rocks or materials, now as they come in would have to comply with the contractor's yard standards.
So does that mean then that the companies which are not being upheld to the standards of the town of Lisbon are in violation of those ordinances?
If they were done before a code change, they're under the old code.
So they could be a non-conforming use to the current code, could be a non-conforming status, or, you know, the town is a complaint-based process only, so in case there was a violation of an approved site plan that didn't have it and they are doing it, that would be a separate enforcement issue, separate from this one as well. The town's not going out and actively, you know, pursuing items. It's kind of the complaint basis process.
We do check our conditional uses,
But,
but
yeah, from
The
a
other
site
ones
plan
are all
upon
complaint-based.
So
operation.
from an ordinance perspective, is it reasonable to categorize our property on Betker Road as outside storage? Not, because it cannot be a contractor's yard. We've determined that, right, Dan?
Correct.
So then by default, it's an outside storage.
okay.
I mean, I'm asking, is that a fair statement?
And I would agree with that one, and that's when I would say your equipment and everything else can stay just like everything else is in the area, because that is you're using that as an operation, but from the storage of maintenance and materials is the contractor's yard part that I'm struggling with.
But I could reasonably make an argument that goods is a broad term, of which it doesn't matter what the goods are, whether it's PVC, topsoil, stone, wood, or salt.
I'm gonna read this one last time. The storage of salt is specifically mentioned in contractor's
Yeah,
yard,
but I'm not a contractor's yard, sir. I am an outside storage.
but that designates it as being salt is supposed to be stored in a contractor's yard. Like, we would have to designate it as a contractor's yard. You don't have 5 acres at that point.
Yeah, but so is
So it's-
sand and gravel and stone and fiber and wood and chips and mulch and everything else. I feel like the two are not, they're not inclusive of each other, they're exclusive. Either you're one or the other. So I think you're categorizing us as the former because it fits the position and not recognizing that we're a contractor's yard, respectfully.
That's fine, you can say that. I'm not reading it again, but. Jane?
No, I agree with what the rules and regulations that we have. Looking at this, open-ended, you've got an east and west opening there in the building, and are winds prevailing from the southwest heavily, and in the wintertime, the winds come from the northeast. I cannot see an open building when we require it of the town to have an enclosed building.
So-
And I feel that this is not satisfactory. It would have to be an enclosed building. That's my feeling.
So ma'am, if I abandoned the statement of building an enclosure, I'm asking the commission, what can I store on my property?
In an open, without a building, just open
I'm an
storage.
outside storage
Can we
company.
go over the list?
I am a zoned business that has outside storage. What can I legally store outside of my property?
I'd have to see the previous site plan to see what was approved. It's in I can kind of go through that one. It's whatever was approved in the site plan of operation. Typically would be your equipment, your trailers, your trucks, and those items. Anybody who could be coming in to do construction, like a Wisconsin Building Supply or somebody else like that, anybody who would be a landscaping company, anything like that, would typically, if they came in today, would be under a contractor's yard. It's just the fact that we're under 5 acres is becoming the issue here. And even if it was over 5 acres, it would not have to be enclosed. That's the other issue. I want to make sure that's perfectly clear here, just because if it was in the 5 acres, it would just be a permitted use at that point and wouldn't have to be covered or stored. So there's nothing in our code that says salt must be covered and stored.
Mhm.
So in terms of just dumping it on a parcel now, that would tend us to say you're inching towards a contractor's yard by dumping 25 truckloads of salt, and therefore you're not in the proper zoning district to do that. So there would be a potential, I don't want to say violation of the ordinance, but a issuance of a notice.
Okay.
No, good.
Chad? I kind of skipped over you, sorry.
No, I'm good, but I think our hands are tied on this. I don't, there's nothing we can do about it.
Then my question to the commission would be, how does one get a variance?
As far as if it's not going to the zoning board of appeals, the only place it could happen then is, I guess I don't remember ever granting one like this,
No.
ever. I mean, it's in our zoning code.
Sure, but I mean, in the realm of municipal code, variances happen on a largely, don't wanna say regular or routine, but they're not infrequent.
I don't remember the last time we granted, I don't remember ever
Granted, a
granting
use
anything.
variance
The
is.
use is different, yeah.
A use is different from a dimensional standard. A dimensional
Right.
standard is what the Board of Appeals is typically used for. It's for when you can't comply with the setback, comply with a certain floor area ratio, or anything else that's a dimensional standard. We're under a use discussion here right now. So,
Yeah, I can't recall ever.
outside of that, it ends up being into a legal matter at that point.
Right, I mean, that's why we have the code, the zoning code. You have permitted and conditional uses. I think you're thinking of conditional uses possibly, but that's not what we have.
I'm by far and wide not an expert in municipal code, but I'm also not immune to the conversation that there are many ways in which codes are modified or adjusted based on the perspective of what we're trying to accomplish, as long as it doesn't violate the integrity of the basis of the rules in the first place.
I don't remember ever
I'm not
bending,
suggesting you
I
haven't. I'm saying
think we're beating a dead horse here. I mean, this is our code. This is what our code is. Our code says this is what it is. This is the definition. Salt is specifically mentioned in the contractor's yard. You can store it there, and if the commission is not backing me in this, let me know. But we're saying you got to put it in an enclosed building with doors.
So, I guess I find it very frustrating, respectfully, to the commission, that grandfathered or not, I'd have to do research, right? But it doesn't feel to me that the remainder of the park upholds the same view that you're placing upon us.
If you want to go door to door and check them all out and find violations and bring them back to the town for our review, you're more than welcome to do that. We will address every single one of them.
I could email it to you right now. I have drone footage.
You might want to be careful with that. But if you want to do that, any complaints you have, we will address and we will look at.
Respectfully, why do I need to be careful?
Drone footage?
Is it illegal to video the world?
With a drone, sometimes it is, yes. Depending on how close you're getting, but that's,
I feel like that this situation, I would encourage you to go visit Globe Contractors.
we did. We just went there, I think, last year or the year before.
Did you go recently? Because as of yesterday, there are large piles of material. Have you
Okay.
visited Always?
Our
recently?
discussion night is with your proposal.
No, I get that. But
If you want to bring any of this up, you are more than welcome to bring this to our town hall tomorrow. You can talk to Gina, you can talk to Dan, over here, you can bring this up, you can talk to our building inspector, whoever you'd like. Right now, we are talking about this, and I believe the commission is in agreement right now on this. So you have direction of what we would allow.
So,
And like I said, if you want to complain about your neighbors, you're more than welcome to do so. We will address any and all complaints, and we will check them to see if they're in violation. We will. I guarantee you we will do that.
so your direction to me is, I can build a building.
And if you want to store salt, you'll have to follow our code on what's allowed as far as the building goes, and we can get you that information.
And there is a site plan there is an approved site plan which has an additional proposed building on it. We just don't have
So
what it would be.
if we're gonna go down the path of a building, and a building can be constructed of various means and materials,
Mhm.
if I took the proposed concept of something like that, let's go back to the enclosure perspective once. And I put a door on it. Is that a building?
It has to match your current,
Your current style of architecture and your current building
So if I
materials.
matched the facade and the architecture, and I built a shell around it,
Something of this nature, if you were able to construct of very similar colors, similar materials, that would suffice.
its
Even if it
materials
was-
also.
even if it was constructed on a block as I outlined.
If you wrapped it with materials and it became integral and looked like your building, and becomes more of a permanent structure at that point, with doors, I would say that would be coming close, and I'm gonna have to refer to the building inspector for what defines a building. But the closer we get to actual and enclosed structure that is listed on the approved site plan, as well as would be a building by definition, then I think we're getting to the point where we can approve or make a recommendation for approval. If we were, again, sitting out somewhere else over 5 acres, I don't think we'd be having this discussion.
Right.
Is it 5 acres of individual parcel or any combination of 5 acres?
5 acres of contiguous land typically is how it's always been. You can own multiple parcels right next to each other, and it becomes your entire site plan as you operate through it if you have appropriate access measures, but typically it's going to be your site is your site contiguous to where you are.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
All right, thanks. Item C, discussion necessary action on the request from Lynch Engineering for the property owned by David and Joyce Perrell for the property located at West 278 North 9312 Sweetwater Lane, tax key LSBT 0166.998.023 for a minor grading permit to construct a paver patio and retaining wall.
Yep.
I don't know what you all have on this, Dan.
All right, I can respond to any questions that you may have, but there is a letter in your packet here tonight from Mitch, from Kunkel, as a response to his review, so I hope you've had a chance to kind of review that. Applicant here, the applicant representative can be here tonight to kind of talk through some of those items. I don't have any specifics on it because it was a Kunkel review, so if there's any specific questions, it may have to be held at that point.
You want to just go over what you got?
Yeah, so, I'm working with the Perals who live on Sweetbriar Lane. I don't know how many are familiar, there's, water issues. It's an undrained low point. As part of that, every year, the water comes up adjacent in spring to their home. They feel some concern about the water getting close to the patio door. In order to try to mitigate any potential, water intrusion into their home, they, want to put up, small, like, retaining wall to kind of just, keep the water from spilling into the front doors. And what we're proposing on doing is, here's the limits of the grading and the easement for the drainage of that undrained low point. We were attempting and kept the walls and the structures within inside that easement so that we won't be in violation or any concerns with that. The one thing that was brought up in the letter as I read is they talked about, there's this one grading point that's outside of the limits here. I've talked to the Perals, they're willing to have this tightened up so that it won't be outside the limits. It's something that we probably do in about half an hour's time to get back to Don Kunkel to review, or Don at Kunkel to review.
Okay. So is everybody, I don't know if you've ever been over there, but this is an area of the town that it floods. I mean, now there has never been any actual water that's entered their home, but I mean, this area is as bad as anywhere around the area here when it floods, so.
Spring, I assume.
Well, it's essentially when the ground is frozen and it rains like this last year, that's usually what happens.
Okay.
We've been examining different ways to do things. Quite frankly, a lot of them are just so expensive. I mean, we're talking $500,000 plus to try and alleviate this, which we just can't do.
Not in the budget.
Yeah, we just can't do that. So this is a way, I mean, do you feel that this will alleviate any issues moving forward with them?
Yes.
And it won't push any more water off anywhere on any other property owners?
Correct. It's all, I mean, the flood elevation that's established, I think, back in the 90s when this was built inside was elevation 1026. We're trying to stay and keep all of our grading above that elevation of 1026. We've examined the low points in the road adjacent to them, but basically this spills over. We've raised up that short wall just, it'll probably be about chest height, but that equals about a foot, 2 feet above the low point in the road, so that if there is a catastrophic event, they should be, kept whole and dry and they'll go over the road. So it's just for those extreme storms or events that go beyond what is currently modeled, basically.
Well, the issue would be that we are obviously prone to or witnessing more, quote, extreme weather events. And so I don't replicate the mistake I made just about a half an hour ago. In water issues, what we're usually doing, if said homeowner puts something up, if the commission is certain that this doesn't push the problem away from said homeowner and affect another homeowner, then it should be appropriate or adequate.
Yes,
And Brian, did you visit the site? No.
I did not.
Okay.
I've been there
Okay.
many a times,
Many times.
waist deep, in fact.
So this isn't going to make a.
Oh, when it,
I mean,
when it flooded, I was there many
yeah.
Okay.
times, but not lately.
So
Actually, back in the 90s, they dug out a portion of the area to create compensatory storage so that they could grade in here. So basically in the late 90s, they addressed that concern. We're just basically adding some belts and suspenders to make sure that
It doesn't get in.
it doesn't get any worse.
Right.
Okay.
the worst this has ever been, water has not entered their basement. Now, so, when these homes are built, they're given a specific minimum, like this is the lowest you can go with them. You have to be so far above groundwater. And a lot of these houses were built right at that elevation. I think this was one of them.
Yeah.
So
We
It-
can't,
at the highest this water's gotten, it still has not gotten to the home. That being said, if they want to put something in to make sure that it secures it, that we don't have a
Yeah.
bigger flood or whatever, I mean, as long as it doesn't
we have
affect the
no
other
control of
homeowners.
groundwater though.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't affect the other homeowners. I mean, whether or not this saves their house is not, saying it's not our concern is, it's a harsh thing to say, but that's not what we're here today. We're here to say whether or not we're okay with this going there, whether it works or not is on them.
Okay.
But whether or not it will affect other homes around, and it's what our stormwater engineer would be talking to us about. I think if we were to go ahead, I mean, I don't have an issue with this whatsoever. I
Did he
don't.
look at it yet? Our
I know he's
stormwater
looked at it,
engineer?
but I think,
I read the letter. What he identified in the first point was that are the residents aware that there's a stormwater issue? And obviously they are. I mean, they're the ones, they've talked to you quite a bit on it.
Oh, yeah.
They've lived there for a long period of time. They've read the letter by Waukesha County that kind of identified some of the concerns, then the history of the project and of the flooding, so they're fully aware of, the issues. The second portion basically identifies that grading line, which I drafted in pink from the 1990s and said, hey, we're doing pretty good, or we did pretty good, you got one contour out of that. That might be something for consideration. And I talked to the Perals, and they said, yeah, we're willing to make our yard just a little bit steeper and pull that contour back. So we addressed that one. The third and the fourth points are basically, put in erosion control measures and make sure you pull the correct permits for this. I talked to the county, Lake Hall, and basically said, based on the size or the amount of grading that we're doing here, that we are below the limits needed for pulling permits from the county. So the only permit that we have to pull is a minor grading permit, which typically doesn't have to come to this board.
right.
But because of the concerns around here, I think you wanted to just kind of speak about it a little bit.
He's 100% correct. This typically would not have come to us. It's just with everything that's happened over here in the history, it was, Kunkel and I had talked to and said, yeah, let's get it up to the Plan Commission. Let's talk about this. We'd hoped Don would be here tonight. Obviously, something happened or Mitch couldn't make it. But
Okay.
I think if we were to approve this, I think we'd do it contingent upon it being signed off by our engineer. So, but I mean, I would,
That is perfect, because
Right.
they want to get this built and constructed for spring, so they're not going through the same concerns again.
right, because spring is when
No.
it happens, and if we wait another month for this, that's gonna put them
Yeah.
outside of the building season for
Yeah.
doing this, so.
You
Does
don't
anyone
wanna-
have any questions on it? I don't see that, it doesn't seem like anyone's got any issues on this.
No.
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 All right, I'd make a motion that we approve the request from Lynch Engineering for the property owned by David and Joyce Pearl for the property located at West 278 North 9312 Sweetbriar Lane for a minor grading permit to construct a paver patio and retaining wall, contingent on our engineer signing off on it. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ed. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item D, discussion and necessary action on Resolution 12-19, a resolution amending the Town of Lisbon land use map for the property known as the Brown property, for the property located at North 55 West 25299 Richmond Road, tax key LSBT 0273.998, and recommendation to the Town Board of the same.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This item is back in front of you tonight from more of a procedural standpoint. The town's comprehensive plan actually dictates what specifically has to be done for the comp plan amendment procedure to move forward. We didn't have the resolution in your packet at the last meeting, so as a result, the resolution is in front of you here tonight. And so at that point, it would then be forwarded on to the town board, which would then actually pass an ordinance amending, proposing that change. And so at this time, we also had, at the last town board meeting, recommended that the item be held over and to the point where the town attorney could actually forward a letter on to the Village of Sussex to state that we would formally like to begin the process to amend Exhibit H of the border agreement and move that process forward. And so once those items have all been submitted to the village and this item has been signed, the town board can then move forward with this ordinance amendment. So that's where we are. So this is just a follow-up to that one. So if you want to kind of read through the ordinance, I can do that. I probably would maybe make a small tweak as I was reading it here a little bit ago, earlier today and now. The fourth, now therefore be it resolved by the Town Lisbon Plan Commission that the map amendment is hereby approved by the Town Lisbon approved for the Town of Lisbon land use map by a majority vote of the Plan Commission as described in the state statutes, subject to the approval of the Village of Sussex, as this proposed change is different from Exhibit H in the border stipulation agreement, and then therefore the next statement there talks about how it should be amended. So my only tweak to that one would be, instead of as this change modifies Exhibit H, it does not modify it. This proposed change is different from Exhibit H, and so that's my point. That I want to make sure that we're stating that Exhibit H is not modified as a result of this. So
Okay.
we can make that change and with that approval, and then get 6 signatures. So we're recommending approval of that.
The change differs from Exhibit H of the boundary stipulation?
Yep, it's different. And then as a result, therefore be it further resolved that Exhibit H of the Lisbon Sussex boundary stipulation projected land use added service area in the town receiving village sewer service is to be amended and be consistent with the proposed land use amendment upon approval of all government authorities involved. So I just want to make sure that we're not stating that Exhibit H is changing as a result of this. We're telling and asking that Exhibit H be modified as a result of this resolution and ordinance change. Small tweak, but kind of an important one.
I think, yes.
Slight.
Based on tonight's discussions, yes.
Does anyone have any questions or concerns on this?
No. Nope.
So we could just approve Resolution 12-19 and recommend that to the town board.
Town board.
That's all we
Yes.
gotta do?
That's all you gotta do.
So moved.
Yeah. Second it.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Dan will work to get signatures from you guys then.
It's printing now.
All right. Item E, discussion necessary action on the request from Zach Zimmerman for the property located at North 91 West 26399 Hickory Road, tax key LSBT 0164.998, to construct a third accessory building for agricultural use as required in the Waukesha County Shoreline and Floodline Protection Ordinance Section 3, Parent J, Parent 4, Parent C. How you doing?
Good evening.
Good evening. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This item is before you not as a result of our own ordinances, but actually Waukesha County's ordinances. Mr. Zimmerman here is tonight to talk about the addition on his property, a additional accessory building or additional building on his property on quite a large piece of property. So I do have the map up here in front of you. I don't have the total top acreage off the top of my head, but I believe it was
79.5.
Yeah, well over our 10 threshold limit. In the town ordinances, it states that you are allowed 2 accessory buildings on a parcel. If it's over 10 acres, an agricultural building would not count towards that two limit, as well as a chicken coop would not count towards that 2 limit. The reason why I bring those two up is the applicant does have an existing barn, does have an existing chicken coop at the time we had discussed, but as he mentioned to me tonight, that chicken coop is no longer there. So now we're down to a situation where we just have an existing barn and an existing detached garage. So from that standpoint, we are sitting with one accessory structure from the town's ordinance perspective. Waukesha County has a little bit different interpretation in their code. It's a slightly different code. So they are requesting him to come in front of this body and recommend one way or the other if you would approve an additional accessory building. So the applicant can talk about his accessory building. If it were completely a town ordinance item, Brian and I probably would have had the approval already. It does meet our town's ordinance, but as a result, he has to come here and get a recommendation to move forward.
So basically, he meets our ordinance.
Yes.
So we just have to tell Waukesha County that he meets our ordinance?
Yep.
Well, he's in shoreline zoning.
Yes.
But
So
they
that's
get to make the decision, essentially, correct?
And they're looking for the recommendation
Right,
from
correct.
you to
Yes.
approval or
They
not.
want us to,
And it had to come from the Plan Commission, couldn't just come from our ordinance.
So if this had not been in shoreline, this would already be approved and
Yes.
done.
yes.
Does anyone have an issue with this?
No,
No.
I
Are you gonna
I
store
don't.
salt in it?
Is it going to have
I
a
was
door
gonna
on
say it, but I didn't.
Will be a full, four-sided permanent construction.
Stop.
Brian, anything?
No, nothing
Jane?
at all.
No,
Chad? Ed?
No quarreling neighbors, right?
Oh,
No,
sorry,
of
were you
course
gonna say
not.
something, Chad?
I'm ready to make a motion.
Do it.
Go.
All right. I'm going to approve the request for North 91 W26399 Hickory Road LSBT 0164.998 to construct the third accessory building for agricultural use as required in the Waukesha County Shoreland and Floodland Protection Ordinance section.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Dan?
My only comment to that one is it would be in, from the town's perspective, and maybe this should be an added note, from the town's perspective, it would only be accessory building number 2. So,
Is a motion.
I don't know if you want to make a note.
Do you
of
want to add that as a note in your motion?
Yes, I would.
Second?
Agreed.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just keep it colorful.
Little match.
That would have really gotten that tone and going.
Item 5, Town Planner Report, sign code updates.
All right. So for sign code updates, I've discussed with Dan and Gina, and we're actually kind of looking for a potential working session with the Plan Commission to kind of go through impact fee, sign code, keep that separate potentially from a standard Plan Commission meeting, because otherwise things tend to get lost in that item when you're reviewing with other people's. So Dan and I are looking for some direction of where we can have an actual, more or less, working session with this body. And with that, we'll also bring probably a handful of other things that we've noticed over the years that we also want to talk about and address. And at that time, we may also bring up, at that working session, we may have it on the agenda to talk about the short-term rentals and stuff like that. So we're looking for more of a working session. And so I think what Dan and I are looking for is some dates. If you could send Dan dates that where you're not available, that would, over the next few months, that would be kind of preferred. And so,
Doodle poll?
a doodle poll. Well, I didn't want to have him send out 45 dates on it. So if there were dates that were already just a no-go, let's potentially just, if you're out of town for a week, just send those to Dan so that we don't even put that as a possibility, unless you're okay with potentially not being a part of that. But I'd like to have everybody here for that.
Pick a couple and let me know.
Okay, sounds good. It's good. It's
Doesn't
gonna
have to be 45.
I'm thrilled. I've only asked for this for 5 years, 4 years.
Got my
No.
schedule.
Anything after
Who's counting, Jane?
Huh?
Who's counting?
Yes.
4 or 5 years?
Okay.
So that's what I wanted to bring up with that one, because we're also going to have, we've got a pretty good draft of that sign code update pretty much ready to go. It's about to go over to the attorney's office to make sure that we're complying with those items. But we think we've done a pretty good job of kind of addressing the needs that we wanted to talk about. And as a result of our Gordy sign situation that we had last month with an oversized sign that we ultimately approved, we started to bring some of that flexibility back into this ordinance as well. And so we wanted to make sure that we took a little bit of a backpedal on that to make sure we
Are
brought
you
in some of
looking
those.
for something in November?
I'm comfortable either way. Typically, I would say more or less December because of early December, because not a lot of plan commission applications are happening at that time, except for subdivisions, because they're getting prepped for those, for building cycle next year. But we're not seeing a lot of site plan of operations, so.
Did you want to have it before the November 14th meeting with some of the agenda items that are coming? Or
We could, if that's possible.
Maybe between the 28th town board meeting and the 14th.
30th to the 5th. I'm gone. 6th is not available.
All right, let's do December then.
Yeah, I'm
Just
going.
telling you right now.
I'm going
No,
November
that's fine.
5th through the 12th.
So I know it was a little short
That I know.
notice, but that's the reason why I was thinking.
Well,
it
let's
could-
come up with some dates.
I'll send you guys
All
a
right.
list.
Okay.
And, okay,
All right.
All right.
So planners appointments, parking lot maintenance, you saw today was one of them.
joy one.
Fantastic.
You see why it was a little bit of a hard situation from a standpoint of what direction that we go. My take on that one was, as long as it's an enclosed structure, it's fine. However, I don't know how other stuff happened in the area, but our code was pretty clear about what it was.
Salt.
So,
Yeah.
the other one is Quarry Corners on that site. Let me actually zoom back to the map here. This is the area, the commercial sector. We had a call about this lot over here. I believe it was the owners across the street,
Oh, the mobile station.
mobile station. We're looking at a truck wash. So a kind of a large truck wash. And we told them, frankly, about just be mindful of the impacts to water table and how you would be proposing to reuse water and all those other items. And so they're investigating the feasibility of a truck wash. Now, if there's ever a spot close enough to the community where that would be, this would be kind of one of those areas. So, so that was that one. So that one hasn't come in yet. We just met today with the owners of the barracks. That's that multifamily property on the eastern edge of the community. So they were looking at how to potentially add more units on their multifamily. You pretty much can't until they become sewer and watered, and that's not going to be any time in the near future. So we talked to them about improvements to their property. So they are non-conforming use at this time. They may be looking at making some improvements. So they may come to the building inspector with, we want to add on to the building, which and we told them about the 50% rule. So they are going to be kind of tracking that as they move forward. They may be wanting to move stuff into a utility room instead of having furnaces and water heaters in their attic. Get it out of there, keep it a little bit separate, and so keep those separate. So that was that one. And then H&H Auto, that's a property, everyone kind of knows where that is. Realm Trucking came in and was the user of that site. They have a potential buyer for that site, as well as the green space, kind of the undeveloped space closest to F. So they're looking at doing a 2-lot CSM. It's currently 3 lots now. Doing a retracement CSM to kind of reconfigure that line, get that parcel to be split off to a different owner. Realm would obviously have to come in and actually get their site plan of operation amended so that to reflect a new owner after that. So we're looking at potentially a 2-stage process. So a CSM to split that parcel off. I believe affordable signs would still be as part of that use, as well as the H&H Auto, but there would be a new potential user. They don't know what they would do yet. I think somebody's just looking at picking up some property and kind of planning for the future on that one. So that's that. So that's those I have as part of our town planner appointments that have things that have come up. So it's still under B. Is we had a situation come in about the definition of subordinate.
Oh, yeah.
Subordinate use and subordinate structure. Our town code, when we come to accessory uses, dictates that an accessory building, is subordinate to and detached from the principal building. What that ultimately means to me, and every place that I've ever been in my career, has stated that the building must be smaller than your footprint of your existing home. So to be subordinate, it must be smaller. Waukesha County does not have that interpretation. They have stated that as long as you have a building and you have a residential structure on the parcel first, that building is subordinate. It could be 4 or 5 times as big from a footprint standpoint, but it would still classify as subordinate. I don't have any documentation of how the town has handled that in the past, and we're running into that situation here, potentially coming up soon, is we have a spot off Silver Spring. Individual with about 1.5 acres is looking at building a garage that is about 4,000 square feet with a footprint of a home that's 1,700 square feet. It's got a second story, but it's on 1.5 acres. So in my situation, I read subordinate as it must be smaller than the primary use of the property. Waukesha County has a different take on it. It is in shoreland, but they will be coming back to make sure the town does not object to their size either, so,
My garage is bigger than my house.
so.
That was approved in 2005.
Is it bigger than total footprint or total square feet? Both?
Footprint,
And what size acres are you on?
1.75.
Okay, well then you're kind of in that, that's a kind of a, I would say a standing point at some point, so. Then we need probably, I would say, whatever we decide to go with, we need to modify the definition of subordinate or that definition to make it clear what that means. And so as long, to me, that would mean Waukesha County's perspective, which states that as long as the residential building is there first, your other building is subordinate and maybe would require plan commission approval. So my point is, it's just everywhere I've been, it's always been kind of this direction, and now I'm here and it's been a different direction I didn't anticipate, so. So have there been any others that have been approved that we've kind of created a template for?
I'm imagining there's more than a few.
So,
Schaeffler. That was one. Yeah, we'll probably have to look at that, because I think there's been, because our
How
code
many
said
acres is
accessory-
that?
1.5.
1.5.
our code said that you could have up to, I think, 900 square feet at the time when I built mine, and now it's more.
I think in here, he can be up to, in this case, using those stipulations, he was proposing an 80-foot extension on the back of his 26-foot deep garage, another 80 feet on behind of that one, or I think it was about
Well,
that.
he's at his max for his detached accessory building.
Yep.
So he wants to attach that accessory building to his house via a breezeway, walkway, or whatever, which would then, and he figured would enable him to extend that 80 feet.
The breezeway that was proposed was not a breezeway.
Yeah, it wasn't.
It was a cantilevered pillar, more or less.
It started out really good until he got prices back, and then it got smaller.
Smaller and smaller.
Kind of changed the paradigm.
Yes. So,
How many square feet on the garage?
well, it's 32 feet wide by 108 feet deep.
But here's another example. If he wouldn't be in shoreline and he had 5 acres, he could build a 4,000 square
Yes.
foot.
If he was in 5 acres.
And he could have a 1,500 square foot house and build an accessory building, but he's not, that's,
Right.
so I mean, subordinate, I guess that's where you come in where
Yes,
we have to
yeah, so
really
the subordinate
define that.
definition wouldn't come in play from a standpoint of accessory building versus, I think, there's a different definition once it reaches a certain point, and that's when you get to those larger square foots are a different definition,
Yeah,
so.
as long as there's no business being run
Yeah,
out of it.
he's a hobby car guy,
Yeah.
and his wife
There-
wants his cars out of the driveway.
Yep, yep.
Yeah,
know where
it's
this
just
is?
in the
The
definition.
boy's
So,
choice.
Silver Spring.
Yeah, but
Um,
Silver Spring's pretty big.
yeah, it's, hold on, let's pull it up. It's over near the Quick Trip location. So let me get over there.
It's a little bit across from Beacon Hills,
Yeah.
not directly across.
Yeah. So here we are, and here's Quick Trip down here. We're talking this parcel right here.
Where?
See my mouse?
Is that by that trucking company?
My head's in the way here.
No, it's-
Yeah, he's close to Olson, yeah. He's not, he's close to Olson.
What's that subdivision right next to?
Oh,
Lakewood?
Isn't that Brayton Estates, I think?
Which, this subdivision here?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Isn't that-
Thousand Oaks. I think that's Thousand Oaks.
That's Thousand, yes, that's
Yep,
Thousand Oaks.
Thousand
Oh,
Oaks.
okay.
Yeah.
Wrong one.
Brighton Estates is
Brayton
further
Estates
east.
the other way.
Other
Yeah.
side.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where does again? I'm sorry, Dan.
This one, right here, if my head's not in your way.
Okay.
With the open field, you can,
Yeah.
Yeah. We also talked to him about potentially, if you could acquire more land behind you, you could get to that 5 acres, but then we also took a look at, well, this road was probably planned to come into here at some point, and that would eliminate that possibility. So
Okay.
I'm looking for some direction, because he's ultimately going to the planner of the day to talk about it, but they're gonna look for our direction here of what does that mean.
Yeah, there are 2 single-family homes there, and if it's the one you just pointed to, if he puts that size of, I mean, that's just gonna totally dwarf
Wh-
that home.
where is, he's gonna put it in front of the home?
I'll
To
show
the-
you guys
To
here.
the side, if you,
So it's a
if you
one,
drive by there, the existing shed is like, the house is
He
here.
has a detached garage, doesn't he,
Right,
Brian?
they're almost directly across from each other. He
Yeah.
wants to extend it out. Yeah, Dan will pull it up.
Well, this is, I mean, as far as direction, you're looking at direction on a broader term, not necessarily just for
Not
this.
this one, I need to know how we
Right.
define.
Yeah, so we're not looking at this
Oh.
particular property,
Yeah.
we're looking at a broad
His name
term.
Doug?
Are we okay with having,
Okay.
how do we want to define this?
Add 80 feet onto here, so you're looking about, if you can follow my mouse,
Wow.
about to here.
No.
Again, we are looking at a
Yeah.
broad
Yeah,
definition of
definitely.
this.
Yep.
We
Understood.
have historically approved this in the past.
Well, I can certainly.
I'm of a different opinion, I think, a few people in this room, because I think if it's on your property, you should pretty much be able to do most things. But,
Yeah.
I
Which is the reason why I think this would come into our planner
Yeah.
kind of working session.
Yeah.
I don't think we should be talking
modify
colors, I
some
don't think we
Okay,
should be
yeah.
talking how it looks, I don't think we should be talking, it's on their property, it's not hurting anyone, I think we should do it.
But but it is coming back to us, so
Okay.
that's the reason why. It came as a planner appointment kind of discussion, actually started with Brian. So Waukesha County is gonna be looking for our direction of what it
Yeah,
is. So-
I would caution us because that home isn't that far. That structure won't be that far off of VV.
Again, we are talking broad terms.
I know, but I'm just
Don't
thinking.
talk about this one, talk about broad terms, Ed.
Okay.
Well, the word subordinate is in the zoning code 4 times, and really you could take it either way as a size, or you could take it as a use, as subordinate use to the main structure, so that might be a point.
If we've taken as subordinate use, I will go that direction, if we've set that precedent. But I needed to know
I can
that.
tell you at least two, and I'm one of them.
Okay.
So from our standpoint, if we say.
And this wasn't even a question when I came in.
Yeah.
So don't tell the guy that was in here earlier.
Yeah. Now I wanted to give the guy a salt
within
shed.
code,
Okay.
It was within the code, right?
It's within the code.
And in the code.
Okay,
Not a
moving
variance.
forward.
Okay,
Moving on.
I have a
Okay.
wife sitting at an airport, so if you could
Sorry,
speak
last
it, that'd
one.
be awesome.
This is the last one, and this is, again, I would call it a planner appointment, the reason why I'm discussing it here today, you see some common words that we see on the screen there. As a result of our of the Plan Commission's conversation with a certain applicant who was here tonight from a previous meeting, the limiting of hours of operation, I know it's been done for many years, but discussions with the town attorney, discussions with, and myself, we would highly caution against it in a business district. And especially when they have provided valid, I don't want to say valid reasons, but reasons why. And that's again coming back to the changes in conditional use permit. There's a reason why we had you guys not put it in the CUP, because they ultimately provided a reason of why that was there, or why they wanted the 24 hours. And the Plan Commission came back with, well, this could happen, and it's not a measurable item, and so we're just kind of cautioning moving forward, that could put us in a very,
The Center Act 67.
that would, put in the conditional use permit laws, reason why we had you guys pull it out, but from even just a general standpoint, if it's not in our ordinance and it's in a business district, caution you treating that differently than an operation that is in Quarry Corners, different from an operation that is in an improved business district.
There has to be evidence provided of why we would have to, if he provides evidence, why we'd have to provide evidence, why not.
Right,
And then there has to be a reason, it can't just be because.
I understand.
And by attaching it to the site plan of operation and not the CUP, it put us in a little bit better of a situation, but again, I would caution.
Like
If it's in a
Dan stated,
conditional
we
use.
can't say, well, this could happen. We can't assume things are gonna
But the
happen.
history on that particular site, when the first thing was approved, the neighbors were in here grandiosely, let me tell
But
you.
that,
And they
Jane,
didn't,
that cannot be used necessarily. There has to be evidence of why not. Just, you can't come in here and say, I don't want it. This is why there's no sprinkler system at Sussex Napa.
yeah.
Because I took this and I beat it and I won because of the way this is written. It is tough for this body to win that one.
Yeah.
It really is. You have to have actual
Well,
evidence.
then we better watch what lands we put into business districts, because
Right.
we have
Right.
subdivisions all around, and people are used to peace and quiet, and the only reason they changed hours on that site is because the husbands wanted to get their cup of coffee in the morning, so we allowed them to go to earlier hours, because otherwise it was, I mean, they were here in mass.
That was all pre-Act 67, though.
And we can do this
Well,
as a workshop.
so
Yeah,
that's
so this
the way it
I
was.
just wanna make you guys aware in case something else comes up
Yeah.
before the workshop, that we, again,
Okay.
just are being mindful of when people are proposing something and they provide a reason why, we need to be, responsive to that, so. So this will be on our workshop agenda as well,
Okay.
so I just wanted to put it out in front of you guys.
Okay.
So-
All right. Not trying to rush you. but-
I know, nope, that was my
I
last
know,
one.
Joe.
Anything else?
Blank slide.
Any requests for future agenda items? Adjournment.
So move.
Second? Me. Brian, Chad.
For those who haven't had a chance to meet the new town attorney.
One second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're out at 7:36.
All
Nice to
right.
meet you.
Go get your better half at Mitchell.
Yeah.